In this video, we'll turn our attention to the business of debugging, tracking down errors when you can't get your code to work properly. And we'll begin by looking at two techniques for outputting important messages which you can use to monitor key aspects of your code: msgbox and debug.print. In the exercises folder and in the 08 debugging and error handling subfolder, you'll find a file called debugging practice. And you'll probably recognize this from a previous exercise. If we go into the Visual Basic Editor and into the modules folder, you'll find that module 1 contains a simple macro which attempts to delete all the tables. And it does so by starting at table 1 and working its way up to table 12. And as you probably remember, I pointed out that if you attempt to do this, because you're removing objects halfway through, you'll get an error. Because having deleted 6 tables, if you attempt to delete table 7, it no longer exists. So we're cheating slightly here because we actually know the solution to the problem. But let's look at how we can monitor, how we can create output which allows us to monitor what's going on as our program runs, so that we can see exactly when and why the program actually breaks. So what we'll do is to take all of this code and just copy it. And let's just rename the copy. And let's call it msgbox output. So inside our loop, we want to introduce some debugging statements. And the first thing that we want to do is to make sure that our debugging statements don't produce any errors. So we're going to disable error handling within the context of our debugging. And you'll remember from our previous videos in this section, to do that we can say on error resume next. Then after our debugging statements, we reinstate normal VBA error handling by saying on error go to 0. So let's now place our debugging statements between those two lines. And all we're going to do to start with here is to create an MSG box which outputs key information. And the two key bits of information in this context that we want to monitor are how many tables remain and which table are we currently attempting to delete. What I'm also going to do, because we want to actually see within the document what's about to be deleted, we'll also select the table. So let's just copy this statement. This document.tables_i.select, and then up comes our message box. So let's say tables remaining, ampersand paste, and this will of course be this document.tables.count. Then let's go on to a new line. And then table to be deleted. This time we only really need I. So there's our monitoring statement. Let's save, because of course when we run we're going to mess up our document, so we'll want to revert to the saved version. So important to save before testing. So first table, January, 12 remaining, table 1 about to be deleted. Because January has been deleted, March now becomes table 2, which is the next to be deleted. Now May becomes table 3, July becomes 4, September becomes 5, and this is the last table that we can successfully delete. We've got all the way up to November because we're constantly deleting tables. So November will be deleted, but of course now we're in trouble. We've got 6 tables remaining and we're attempting to delete table 7. So the statement this document.tables_i.select will have failed, but because we've got on error resume next, that's the only reason we haven't had an error as yet. But of course, as soon as I click OK, VBA error handling has been reinstated, so I get the normal error. Okay, so that's an example of how you can use the humble MSGbox statement to just monitor what's going on as your macro is running. Let's just close without saving and then go straight back in. And let's compare the MSGbox with the other method of outputting, which is debug.print. The problem with MSGbox, as you can imagine, is that if there are a lot of MSGbox statements, you're constantly having to click OK, OK, etc. So if you imagine we had a couple of hundred of these to do, clearly we wouldn't want to have MSGbox popping up 200 times. So this is where debug.print becomes useful. Instead of displaying a dialog, it simply creates a textual report which you can then look at after your code has run. So let's look at how it works. Let's copy all of this. And just change that to a B. And change this to debug print. So because we're not actually looking at the document while the code's running, we don't need to select the table that's about to be deleted. And all we need to do is to replace MSGbox with debug.print. And to assist readability, I'm also going to put an extra carried return at the end of the statement, so that each pair of lines will be separated by a blank line. And that's it. Again, I'm going to save before running so we can revert to the saved version. When we run, we go straight to the error, because obviously it's quite a quick process. We end. And to monitor the report that's been generated, we simply go into View Immediate Window. And here we can see the output created by the debug.print statement. So all the statements that were coming up in the MSGbox, we can now monitor and we can look for a pattern. And of course, when we get to this line, we can see exactly where the problem occurs. Only 6 tables remaining, and we're attempting to delete table 7. So typically, once you've looked at the output created in the immediate window, you get a bit closer to solving the problem, and what you then do is to select all and delete. So Control A, select all, and just delete it, ready for maybe modifying your debug.print statements to get closer to solving the problem. Just to remind you about solving the problem, by the way, I hope you remember the solution to this problem. You simply reverse these two and then add step -1. So you're starting with the highest number, working your way down to the lowest. Hence, the item that you're targeting always exists because you haven't yet deleted it. But we are just using this purely to discuss techniques for monitoring code as we're trying to isolate a problem. So I'm now going to close this without saving in case we need to test it again. The MSGbox function is a useful and versatile tool for debugging code, allowing you to output key monitoring information while a macro is running. The debug.print function can be used as an alternative to MSGbox when the output messages would become irritatingly frequent, for example during long iterations.